Hello and welcome back to another episode of Be Heard, where your voice will be heard. I'm your host, Dylan Swindle, here with mayoral candidate Jorge Sanchez and our guest, Maricela Stern, Spanish instructor at Centennial High School. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Hi everyone, if you missed it, I'm Jorge Sanchez and I'm running for mayor of Las Cruces, New Mexico. Me llamo Jorge Sanchez y estoy corriendo para ser el alcalde de Las Cruces, Nuevo Mexico. Alright, and today I have with me Miss Maricela Stern. She is one of the teachers I always speak about because when I wasn't doing too well in school, she would pull me aside and she would give me a talk and kind of prepare me for a better future and to do better in that class. So that's kind of why I felt like I should have her on here, because I feel like a lot more teachers need to be a little bit like her. She leads, for example.
Thank you so much.
All right, so the first topic that we're going to be discussing here today, and this episode is going to be similar to the other episodes. We're going to be bringing up broad topics, and we're going to be delving in on the issues regarding those topics and potential solutions. So topic number one for today is the educational system. So what do you think is a problem or problems, and what are the potential solutions?
All right, I feel like one of the problems is that, I think I've said this before, but we go a little bit too easy on our kids, because what I've seen lately is that we are basing this all off the dropout rate, and statistics like that shouldn't matter as much when we're 49th or 50th in the nation ranked for education. I feel like we kind of need to heighten our expectations, and we have this overcrowd in the classrooms where there's 28 to 30 kids in some of the classrooms, and that's not okay. We need to get the teachers either the resources they need to be able to teach these kids, or as that, I mean hire more teachers and kind of take some stress off their shoulders, or we need to give these teachers a higher pay for all the stress we're putting on them. And one of the things is they bring up the average in each classroom, which they say is maybe 22. But the reason why is because they add the special ed classes into the average right there. So there could be 32 kids in a classroom, but if there's only 8 in a special ed class, that brings the average down quite a bit. And that's the reason they don't see that as much of a problem. But me personally, since I've just graduated 2 years ago, I was kind of in those classrooms where we had 30 people in each class.
Right. So let me just kind of spell out the issues that you brought up. So there's overpopulation in the classroom, lack of teachers, right? We are coddling the students and lowering the standards to hopefully keep them in school and graduate. So kind of pushing them through, getting it done.
When what we need to do is have the teachers push the students themselves instead of just lowering the expectations. Like when I wasn't doing very well in class, Miss Stern pulled me aside and kind of told me to get it together, and that she would help me during lunch or whenever I needed help. And that's kind of what we need to give to the kids, not just lower the expectations and not give them the education they need.
Now, Mrs. Stern, you're on ground zero in terms of, the schooling. So what's your take on these issues?
Well, as Mr. Jorge Sanchez mentioned it, one of the biggest problems that we're having and facing as a teacher is the overcrowded classroom. Usually we have between 30 students, I would say. Another thing that we're facing is we don't have the resources. We don't have training. And we don't have technology in classes. And we're in the world that technology is a big part of this society, and the future of this generation. And being in a classroom with no technology is very difficult.
Right. And on top of that, I mean, that comes down to an issue of, educational budgeting, correct? So not only do you not have the technology in the classrooms, you don't have other resources like paper. Whenever I was going to high school, I was seeing teachers going out of their way buying paper with your own money.
Exactly.
Because not only do you have too many kids, you have too little paper.
Exactly.
And those kind of resources. So not only are teachers underpaid, they are then having to take out of their wages more money out just to give the kids the education.
Yeah, and the technology, it's not only as far as not having technology. Back when they brought the smart boards in, a lot of the older teachers I had that were kind of up there in age, they didn't really have the training to use the computers or the smart boards or the programs that they would randomly throw on the teacher's desk and say, this is how we do this now. They wouldn't really give them much training on it, and they would kind of just be confused, and us students would have to take time out of our class to help them out
Right.
and do things like that.
So what do you think needs to be done?
Me personally, I feel like we need to budget better the educational system, and we do need to give teachers the resources they need, and by that I mean the technology, because that would help them out a lot more with the grading, with just pretty much being able to contact the kids, and not only that, but have the training. For the teachers that need it, we need to train them better.
Right. So it seems to me like, because there's overcrowding in the classrooms, there's a lack of technology to assist with these student overloads. So we need more teachers to reduce the strain on the teachers that are already there. We need funding to bring in technology and the resources that are needed to give an efficient and, full education.
Yeah.
And what else do we got there?
Well, I think we can also run a lot of the textbooks off iPads, is what a lot of schools do in California and in other places. Because when I was going, we used Spanish books that were, how old? They were pretty old, right?
Yes.
And you can tell they were used up and written on.
Right.
And we need to also keep track of either the textbooks we give the kids, or we just need to move into more of innovate this into more of a technology era, where we can just kind of get those books on the iPads or on their laptops.
Right. So do you think that, in terms of budgeting, and would you say you're for an increase in the educational budget, I mean?
Definitely, and if not, I would want to work with the state on how we budget that, because I feel like the way they're budgeting it right now is not right. So I would definitely work with the state and with Las Cruces Public Schools on getting that done.
So I have a question for you, because I'm not an expert on this by any means. So in terms of funding for Las Cruces Public Schools, is that determined on a local level, or is that based on state?
That's state.
Okay.
So what I could do is I could probably work at the local level and see how they prioritize their budget spending. And then if I kind of see that we don't have the budget there, I would probably talk to Governor Lujan or somebody up there at the state level and try and get our budget there to where we need it.
Now, as a mayor, there are a lot of issues obviously with the educational system. Say, Governor Lujan isn't receptive to your pleas. Do you think that there's something that you can do as a mayor in terms of funds allocation that you think would be better served in the educational realm?
Definitely. What I would do is, if they didn't want to give us the budgeting, I would personally take it out some of the city budget, because I've seen the city budget and they have hundreds of millions of dollars in there. And personally, if I had hundreds of millions of dollars, I would probably run the city better than it's already being ran. And I would take some of that and put it into our schools, because at that point, we're investing into our future.
Gotcha. So, Ms. Stern, in terms of the bilingual students at the school, do you think that the resources are there for them that they need?
No, they're not. And actually, there is a big shortage of bilingual teachers. Right now, colleges like NMU or Eastern New Mexico University, NMSU, are having problems finding a pipeline of future teachers for the bilingual programs. And the problem is because the bilingual teachers are not having the support in many ways, like resources, like, for example, when the students, they don't do good in the state exams, they get penalized.
The teachers get penalized?
Because it's an evaluation. They base our evaluations on the results of the kids. And other challenges that we have is, for example, with the bilingual program, is that, like I mentioned, less teachers want to become a bilingual teachers.
Right.
And what I saw is they changed it to a 7-period a day, right?
We don't have time for planning.
Yeah.
Right now, currently I have 160 students, more or less, and I just have like 50 minutes to plan and grade papers. And
That's bad for the teachers.
Yeah.
That kind of makes it harder for them to be able to get one-on-one with each student, and as it is, we're already overcrowding the classrooms. So I think that's a problem. And also, not only on the teachers, but on the students as well. They're having to go through 7 different topics each day. And I went to Centennial like 3 days ago, and I also went a month ago. And the backpacks on these students, because they don't have lockers, their backpacks, they have to fit 7 classes worth of books, notebooks, folders, everything into one bag.
Right.
So I've just seen it, man. Their backpacks
Yeah.
like this thick.
Yes.
And I have another question for you. So you had noted that you know, a lot of the bilingual students, if they don't perform well on the state exams, the bilingual teachers are often penalized for this. What do those penalties look like?
Well, it reflects on your evaluation, you know, and then there is a lot of disencouragement because from the bilingual point. For example, teachers they want to become a student in an MSU, they want to become a bilingual teacher. They need to pay more to become bilingual and get certified because they need to take extra classes in order to get the bilingual certification. So there are several things that there are unfair for a bilingual teacher to go through.
Now, given the extra steps that a bilingual teacher has to go through, is there a significant pay increase?
No,
in this?
it's not.
That's
So once again, just asking them to pay more.
yeah.
And then also, I feel like we need to kind of lighten up on the testing because not every student learns the same. Not every student is good at testing. And that kind of just heightens their anxiety. And even then, they kind of just give the teachers a general topic, but in the test, they'll be way more detailed than kind of what they tell the teachers. So it's kind of like when I was going there, the math teacher was scared that he wouldn't do good on the evaluation. So each day we'd have to go through a whole chapter to finish the textbook before we'd have the test.
Right.
And it was kind of hard to learn a whole chapter worth of things in that hour and 15 minutes at the time.
Right. It's like state-sponsored cramming.
Yes.
Really. And that's awful.
Yeah, it's overloading the students. So I feel like we need to kind of pay more details into the way we teach the students.
And may I add something else?
Absolutely.
It will be a good. We live in a bilingual society, New Mexico, Las Cruces, and high school, for example, that are not offering bilingual classes. For example, bilingual math, bilingual social studies, bilingual science. So basically, they are teaching bilingual kids like foreign language classes, but it should be a way for these kids to have, like, for example, science in Spanish too, or another language. Why not?
Yeah, and she's right because I was taking a class, I think it was chemistry, or it was one of the classes that we didn't have in Spanish, but I did have a friend that was in that class with me, and he didn't speak English, but he was in that class with me, and when he would speak Spanish, the teacher would kind of scold at him for speaking Spanish. And I remember that one time she said, "We only speak English in this class." So I know he had a really rough patch to go through in that class. Not only because of that moment, but because I had to help him on the side and explain everything for him at that point.
And that's not something I ever really thought of, was actually the other subjects.
Yeah.
Because for the bilingual classes that they do have, the ones with the most difficulty are often the ones that they have no ability to understand because it's in a completely different language than they know.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how many students don't speak English fluent.
Right.
And
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so we have run out of our time for this first half of the episode. We are going to come back with multiple other topics, assuming that we can get through them, because we seem to have a lot to talk about today. Now make sure you come back after this commercial break, because we are going to keep chopping it up and having a good time.
There you go.
So great. You can do all these different gears like one hand.
Okay.
Nice.
Guys, not all.
up to you to customize your kitchen and bathroom with beautiful countertops and cabinets. Find out more at horizongranite.com. Call us at 575-650-3180.
Horizon Granite is here.
It's here.
Make yourself a beautiful home.
Hi, I'm Ray Bamberg with Here on Earth. I would like to invite you for a free hearing evaluation to our office. We've been here in southern New Mexico for 34 years helping people hear better.
Welcome back to Be Heard, where your voice will be heard. I'm your host, Dylan Swindle, here with mayoral candidate Jorge Sanchez and our guest, Maricela Stern. Thank you for being here. We were just talking about educational system and the issues regarding that and potential solutions, but we're going to move on to the issue of unemployment. What do you got to say about that, George?
All right. Yeah, I've seen our unemployment, and it's too high for what it should be. It was in July. It was at 6.4%, which is 30% higher than the national average. And what we should be aiming for is to be 30% lower.
Right.
We should be aiming more towards 0 than towards 10.
Right.
So I feel like that's a problem, and the reason why is because one of the problems is, say, prisoners, past felons. Once they go through their incarceration, and we kind of throw them back out in public, it's really hard for them to get a job. I've known a few who struggle a lot just to be able to get a job, and the thing that affects is when you can't get a job, they kind of just go back to the life of crime.
Right.
And we need to fix that. And it's also a proven fact where, say, our minimum wage here is $10.20. If they were able to get a job at least $12 an hour, they would probably be 2 times likely to change their life than someone that either makes minimum wage or less. They go back to a life of crime.
Interesting. Now, I don't know if you have any knowledge on this, but do you know what our incarceration rate is looking like here in New Mexico?
At the moment, I don't, but
okay.
I feel like it's pretty high.
I have the same feeling. And in terms of getting employment outside of prison, we were talking with Mike Clark a couple weeks ago, and he had some strong opinions on that as well. Like the system, it's not really set up for the reform of these prisoners, especially whenever they get out.
Yeah.
So what do you think can be done to better that?
What I would want to do is I would want to start a program where we can get them not in the unemployment place, but I'd want to start a program where I can at least speak to them and find jobs that they are allowed to work at and make sure we get them off the streets and back into the workforce.
Got you. That sounds kind of like getting a coalition of businesses together that are open.
Yeah, and a bunch of them are good workers, you know. They just feel like treating them like criminals when these are people who have done their time, they have learned their lesson, and they're just trying to make their way back into society.
What do you think, Ms. Stern?
Well, I think that this proposal is very important. It's important to not only have the programs for these people to success in life after being in jail, and don't put them aside,
right,
and give them the opportunity and the chance. Yeah.
Because I know people who've also not been to prison, but they do have a misdemeanor or something on their background check, and that kind of just takes them away from half the jobs they're able to get.
Right.
And they kind of have to deal with working at these low-end, kind of high school level jobs the rest of their life.
And of course, it's no secret that a lot of times people who are getting incarcerated are people who didn't finish their high school. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in raising the standards and giving the resources and the funds needed to get people properly educated and give them the foundation to have a successful future.
And that starts with the community, with the children, and also with the teachers. Have you ever met a teacher that you can tell doesn't care?
Not really.
No?
I guess we are there not for the money. Everybody knows that we are not there for the money. We are for the passion of the kids. Yes.
So I guess that really goes to show what the actual issue is. It's not a matter of teachers not caring. It's really comes down to not having the resources to effectively do what they train themselves to do.
Exactly. Enjoy the teaching. Sometimes I feel I don't even have the time to enjoy my students. like get them that individual assistant that they need, because it happens so fast, and then I have to start preparing and grading, and yes,
and
it's difficult.
Miss Stern was actually one of the teachers who went out of her way to make sure that the students were happy.
Right.
It was you, Miss Bischoff, and Miss Limke were like a team when I was in high school, at least, and they would make sure that we would go on field trips. They would go out of their way to make sure that the principal at the time would give them the funding to take us on the field trips. And even then, sometimes if they wouldn't give them enough funding, they would actually buy her a meal. I remember that happened. They took us to El Paso to the art museum, and they took us to the courthouse here to learn about the interpreters, and things like that do affect you a lot. Me personally, I loved when we went to the courthouse, and it inspired me so much when I was there.
Right.
That I actually really did consider deeply into going into that career. So things like that do help the students a lot. So we do need to give them the funding and the resources to get these things done.
Right. I haven't gone on a field trip since elementary school.
Exactly.
So
And that's what
good
I'm
on
saying.
you
In
for
high
getting
school,
that done. That's awesome.
if it wasn't for them, I would have probably never been on a field trip. And they really did go out of their way on taking us and making sure that we understood the importance of what they were teaching us meant.
Gotcha. Y'all have any final thoughts on the unemployment issue?
Well, I think I got right there. We kind of bring more small businesses. And another thing that I would do is actually is the city does give grants. They gave all of Main Street grants. What I would do before I were to give a grant to a business is ask them 2 questions. Because I feel like we've been giving these grants kind of to the wrong businesses. They kind of care too much on how the city looks. Well, when we need to ask is how many jobs will this bring? And number 2, are these family supporting jobs? Because it won't really help bringing a Taco Bell when maybe just the manager or 2 managers will have that family supporting salary, but we have the rest working for minimum wage.
Interesting. So that now you're kind of speaking on selectivity of the businesses that you are going to...
That I would help,
Right.
at least. Because we accept all businesses,
Right.
but
Of course.
what we want to help is not how the city looks, but how the people
Right.
can kind of get their
Yeah, we're-
salary and be able to support their family.
We're focused on the welfare of the people.
Yes,
Not just, corporate execs. We're looking at the workers.
exactly.
Got you. All right. Well, now that we're done with that one, we are going to move on to crime.
All right.
Now, obviously, the crime is an issue everywhere, but let's bring it down to the local level.
Yeah, it kind of started, like I said, a lot of the ex-prisoners cannot get, number 1, jobs, and number 2, housing. Because I don't know if you know this, but whenever you do go to rent a home, and I know this because I'm licensed in real estate, they will not give you, rent you a home if you have a bad record, if you have a felony. It's very hard to get a home, to get even a loan, actually, and be able to rent a home. So that's why they do go back to a life of crime.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, because they're kind of we kind of back them into a corner.
Yeah.
When after you commit your crime, and I say I put you in jail for 10 years, you've done your time. Why should you have to come out and just suffer for the rest of your life for a crime that you already paid?
Sounds rigged.
Yeah.
Sounds like a rigged system.
I guess it's like a breaking a cycle, a bad cycle, because if they don't have support, they are going to be an issue for society in general, no? But if they're helped and if they're able to overcome those problems,
Right.
then it will be different.
And one thing I feel like that as the younger generation, they have a very bad outlook on the police department. They really do, there's a lot of sayings I probably can't say on there.
Right.
But they do have a very bad perspective on the police department. And what I feel like I would want to do is I'd have one day at every school bring the police department, at least maybe 12 officers or however many would come, and have them speak to the students, show them that they're not bad people. Show them that we're actually in good hands here.
Got you. So you're trying to bridge the division between the law enforcement, who, on the fundamental level are citizens just like us.
Yes, and a lot of them are good people.
Right.
I feel like people just kind of have bad perspective, and what we need to do is we need to bring them together and show that our police department, which I'm in huge support of, are very good people. And I personally don't know many police officers, and I hope you guys know that's a good thing.
Right.
So, but from when the ones I have met,
Right.
they are very good people.
Right. And in general, I've had pretty pleasant experiences with police officers. I have been pulled over. I will admit, for a little speed.
Yeah, we got that on camera, so you have to live with that.
Totally got you.
Just confess to a crime you committed.
Look, we're taking this down. But let's get back to this. So, a lot of the topics that we've been bringing up here seem to have fundamental roots in our educational system. Because, as you were saying, a lot of the criminals that are caught in this bad cycle lack the support that they've needed from very early ages, formative years. So it seems to me that the common theme here is that we need to get our school system operating at full efficiency. So,
Yep.
how's that water?
It's pretty good.
I'm glad. It's a loss.
Yeah. You gonna hit the other topic?
All right, we're going to move on to a new topic. We're going to go to housing. All right, connected to crime and unemployment.
Yeah, and I would want to kind of go. I've seen some cities like Philadelphia, cities in Connecticut, and around the United States. What they do is they go and get some of these abandoned buildings, and they invest into them and kind of clean them up, and they kind of make them into apartments. What I would do is I would get some of the abandoned buildings here in Las Cruces in the lower income parts of the business parts, and maybe try and buy them out and make that housing for the people that do need housing. Some of these people that are right out of prison, or some of these people that don't have the income, we need to give them affordable housing.
Got you. And I apologize, George. I brought us onto a topic, but we are running out of time, so I got to bring this to a close.
Right.
Thank you to our viewers for watching our episode. We have gone over a lot of topics, mostly regarding our educational system, and we saw its trickle-down effects on things like unemployment, crime, and housing. So make sure you watch the whole episode, obviously. We'd like to thank our guest, Maricela Stern, for coming on here. You were a pleasure to have. George, do you have anything less to say?
Yes, I just wanted to let the people know, if I am elected as mayor, I feel like the city of Las Cruces needs somebody that has a hand and a foot in every single group here in Las Cruces. This is one of the most diverse cities in the United States. We need somebody who doesn't divide us more, and we need somebody that unites us and represents every single citizen here in Las Cruces the same. Thank you.
Awesome. This has been another episode of Be Heard, where your voice will be heard. I am your host, Dylan Swindle, here with mayoral candidate Jorge Sanchez and our guest, Maricela Stern. Thank you for tuning in for another episode, and we will see you next week.
I am George Sanchez, mayoral candidate, and I approve this message. Esteban Olivas, Treasurer.